In Han Sen's room at Steel Armor Shelter, Han Sen was taken aback by the black tiger with a third eye on its forehead in front of him. The tiger's claws looked like they were made from black metal. Han Sen could not believe it was Meowth that he was looking at. What was more surprising to him was the change in Meowth's data. Type of beast soul of sacred blood three-eyed cat. Pet, transformed and evolved. The words were easy to understand, but shocking nonetheless. After eating some meat of mutant phantom ants, Meowth started to transform as a mutant pet. But after the transformation was over, it became a sacred blood pet, which was something Han Sen had never heard of before. Han Sen repeatedly confirmed the word sacred blood, and decided to go back to the Alliance and look it up on the Skynet. How could this happen? I have read a lot about beast soul pets, but never knew a pet could evolve. After a lot of searching, he finally found a relevant post on the Polar Night forum. The poster was someone with the ID Pet Life, a fanatic about beast soul pets. Because beast soul pets were very rare and high maintenance, people would not bother to feed an average pet, since they would be useless even after transformation. But Pet Life had fed nearly 1,000 beast soul pets in a decade, all of which had transformed. Of course, what Pet Life had bought was mainly ordinary beast soul pets, some primitive beast soul pets, and just a few mutant beast soul pets. Among all Pet Life's pets, there was an ordinary mini dog that had evolved after transformation and became a primitive beast soul pet. Pet Life posted the picture of this primitive mini dog and speculated that all beast soul pets had a certain chance to evolve. Although this post was old, there were a lot of replies. Many were calling Pet Life a liar, as there were other pet lovers who had fed hundreds of beast soul pets and saw no such thing as pet evolution. But some people said that their pets had evolved as well. It seemed like a popular post at the time, but had been replaced by other topics later. There is really such a thing as pet revolution. So this only happens for beast soul pets, while other beast souls could not evolve. Han Sen was ecstatic, not only because Meowth had evolved, but also because he had a sacred blood beast soul pet Golden Rock Worm King. Although the chance was slim, what if the Rock Worm King evolved as well? What level would it reach then? But Han Sen knew that this was almost delusional thinking. The evolution of Meowth was great luck, which would not likely repeat itself. Although it was not quite possible, Han Sen was still feeding the Rock Worm King more vigorously. Looking at Meowth, which could switch back and forth between combat state and pet state as he wished, Han Sen grinned. When Han Sen entered Steel Armor Shelter again, his destination was Devil Desert. Taking Wang Mingming last time, he could not have hunted as he had wished. This time Han Sen had made up his mind to make the Sacred Blood Fox King into a barbecue if he saw it again. Putting his Sacred Blood Black Beetle armor on in a secluded place, Han Sen summoned Meowth and made it transform into the combat state. Meowth had fur like tungsten and was twice the size of a tiger. Han Sen was riding it like a mount, and it was much faster than his mutant three-eyed beast. And whenever it encountered different creatures, Meowth would go ahead and kill them. Average creatures would simply avoid it when smelling its presence. Haha, feeding it for so long was totally worth it. This is so much better than a beast soul mount. A beast soul mount would not take the initiative to attack, and could only cause some damage when charging. However, a beast soul pet was simply a specialized killing machine. The only bad thing was that this guy was running too wild, and did not provide a comfortable ride. Once again, Han Sen entered Devil Desert. Without any burdens this time, Han Sen rode the Sacred Blood three-eyed cat in the direction of where the Fox King had appeared. Han Sen just discovered what a great thing it was to own a Sacred Blood pet. He did not even need to lift a finger. For ordinary creatures, Meowth could kill one with each blow. Its sharp claws would break their skulls in an instant, just like how a real Sacred Blood creature would. The creatures that the Sacred Blood three-eyed cat killed were all fed to the Golden Rock Worm King. The Worm King was like a garbage disposal and could consume all that was fed to it. As a result, it grew bigger and bigger. But primitive creatures did not boost its size like the mutant ones did. Primitive sand snake killed. Beast soul of primitive sand snake gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 geno points randomly. Han Sen saw the Sacred Blood three-eyed cat tearing a sand snake of 12 feet long into parts and heard the voice in his mind.
Ah, Kurjaus.
This is the best thing ever. Han Sen grabbed the sand snake beast soul in the form of a spear and felt on top of the world. For the time he had spent in God's sanctuary, this had been the most fun hunting trip Han Sen had ever taken. Meowth was responsible for killing, and Golden Rock Worm King was cleaning after it. All he needed to do was to watch. His only regret was that he had not seen a single horned sand fox after traveling for 2 days in Devil Desert, let alone the Fox King. Strange. Has someone else killed all the foxes?
Han Sen frov ned.
Having walked another half-day, Han Sen had seen not even one creature on the way, which made him feel odd. Suddenly, the huge body of a rock worm appeared in front of him, and Han Sen quickly prepared himself for a fight. Although ordinary rock worms were only primitive creatures, their size was too big and strength too great to be taken lightly. That rock worm stayed still. Han Sen took a closer look only to find that the rock worm was already dead, with its whole head smashed by unknown attacks. It seems that someone has really come here. Han Sen became alert, took back Meowth, and went on walking alone. The number of the bodies of rock worms began to increase. Some died with only half of their bodies above the ground. Han Sen wondered what kind of weapon had made such brutal blows. In addition to the bodies of rock worms, he began to see more and more horned sand foxes' bodies. There were various scars on the bodies, which seemed to have been left by different individuals. Han Sen frowned and continued to travel ahead. In another half-day, he started to hear beast roars, human noises, and steel clanks in front of him. Han Sen quickly hid himself behind a dune, took out his telescope, and started to observe. Son of Heaven.
Han Sen hjälped silently.
In the valley, Son of Heaven and his gang were hunting horned sand foxes. Han Sen knew almost all of them, but one of them Han Sen had never seen before. He was a bear of a man, as strong as Shi Jikong. Wearing half armor and wielding a black sledgehammer, he had a scary look. When he waved the sledgehammer, a rock worm would be crushed and a group of horned sand foxes would be wiped out. Crap! Where did Son of Heaven find this guy? Wondered Han Senator if this guy was from Steel Armor Shelter. Han Sen should have heard of him. Han Sen saw the Sacred Blood Fox King at the end of the valley. The foxes were throwing themselves at the gang, but could do nothing to stop the slaughter. The valley was a cul-de-sac and the foxes had nowhere to run, so they had to stay and fight. If it was not for the fact that I had killed the Golden Rock Worm King, the Fox King might still be able to fight them off. I probably did Son of Heaven a favor. Han Sen quietly sneaked into the valley, unwilling to hand the favor to Son of Heaven. The guy using the sledgehammer was so fierce that the foxes could not resist his attacks at all. With countless casualties, the foxes had been forced into the end of the valley. That Sacred Blood Fox King was also screeching desperately, looking miserable. Haha, Brother Goo, I admire you so much. Son of Heaven God gave the strong guy a rare compliment. Brother, you flatter me. I just got lucky by gaining this Sacred Blood Beast Soul sledgehammer is all. With Goo's modest words, he could not cover the pride on his face. Han Sen was outside the valley, hesitant whether he should rush into the fight right away. The foxes were obviously desperate now with their king stuck in the corner. The gang was about to make it. Suddenly, Han Sen saw a trace of inexplicable slyness from the eyes of the Fox King and suddenly felt a chill. How could I forget how cunning the Fox King is? If it really wanted to run, it would have never come to this place. There must be something wrong. Han Sen quickly hid himself in the valley and looked outside. As Son of Heaven and his gang thought they had all the foxes in their pocket, the Sacred Blood Fox King suddenly arched its body and moved a large stone away, revealing a bucket-sized hole. The Fox King suddenly disappeared in the hole, and all the mutant foxes surrounding it entered the hole one by one. Damn, this beast is treacherous. Follow it, and do not let it run away. Son of Heaven commanded furiously. Han Sen shook his head. Son of Heaven had let the Sacred Blood Fox King get under his skin. If Han Sen were Son of Heaven, he would have ordered retreat immediately. With such a small hole, only one person could squirm through like a snake at a time. There was no way to use weapons, and God knows what tricks the Fox King had set up. According to Han Sen's understanding of the Fox King, it would not have come here just to escape. There had to be something odd going on. So, if it was up to Han Sen, he would have chosen to run. Apparently, Son of Heaven and his gang did not share his thoughts and wanted to go after the Fox King. But when only half of them had gone through the hole, the entire valley started to tremble. All the sand and stones were trembling in waves like the ocean. Indeed, its tricks are about to come. Han Sen quickly retreated and watched this strange scene in the valley from afar. Retreat, quickly withdraw from the valley. Son of Heaven suddenly realized something was wrong and yelled, wanting to rush outside the valley. It was too late. Han Sen saw from where he was hiding that much golden liquid had welled from under the sand as if the sand was bleeding, suddenly coloring the valley golden and flowing toward the gang. With his extraordinary eyesight, Han Sen had seen that the liquid was formed by a sea of numerous bean-sized golden bugs. The golden bugs flowed over the bodies of rock worms and horned sand foxes, leaving nothing behind, not even a bone. When covered by these bugs, the huge rock worm's body disappeared in seconds, which made Han Sen nervous. Now this is gonna be fun. Son of Heaven's gang might all die here. Well done, Fox King.
Han Sen tog delhedlig.
He was waiting to see if Son of Heaven would be killed. If not, he would finish Son of Heaven off himself. He had wanted to kill Son of Heaven for a while now, but never had the chance. Son of Heaven was too strong himself and was always followed by his gang. Finally, he had encountered such a good opportunity, and Han Sen did not intend to let it go. Son of Heaven's gang was soon surrounded by those golden bugs. There was no way to run from the sea of bugs. Go out. Son of Heaven gritted his teeth and started to run. The gang stomped on the bugs and rushed out. The bugs were more fragile than Han Sen had imagined and could not even withstand their weight. But there were so many of the bugs that many managed to climb into the gang's clothes. Ah! Screams suddenly sounded, giving Han Sen goosebumps and pleasure at the same time. These people deserve this. Follow me, roared the guy using the sledgehammer. Wielding his weapon, he had blown away the bugs and sand and cleared out an area of 6 by 9 feet. Waving the sledgehammer, the big guy threw sand and bugs in front of him in the air and made away for the rest. Following this guy, Son of Heaven's gang managed to leave the valley. *T. Who is this fierce guy? I can't believe Son of Heaven survived that. Han Sen was upset. When the gang left the valley, those golden bugs did not follow them. After swallowing all the dead bodies, the bugs descended into the ground again. It took less than half an hour before the valley was quiet again. Not even a drop of blood was left. It was as if nothing had happened. Son of Heaven's gang members were covered in rags and blood now. Luckily, their wounds were not serious and they had killed all the bugs stuck on their skin. Damn, that Fox King is too cunning. A gang member cursed while dealing with his wounds. Brother Gu, thanks to you, we are still alive, Son of Heaven said to Gu. Gu smiled and said, it's nothing. We are friends. Suddenly Gu's expression changed as he felt acute pain in his waist. 2 daggers were stabbed deep into both sides of his waist, and only the handles were exposed. 2 of Son of Heaven's men each took one of Gu's arms and pushed him down on the ground. The rest helped control Gu as well, leaving him no chance to fight back. Blood flowed from his waist. Han Sen was appalled. He did not expect to see such a turn. They had just been through life and death, and Gu had even saved the gang members' lives. How come Gu was suddenly treated like a dog? What are you doing? Gu muttered, unable to believe what had happened. How dare a piece of crap like you call Son of Heaven brother? You only got lucky because you have gained a sacred blood beast soul. One of Son of Heaven's men stomped on Gu's face, filling Gu's nose and mouth with blood. You bastards! Seething with anger, Gu tried to struggle. Pushed down by several people, his strength still almost allowed him to throw them off. One of Son of Heaven's men grabbed a dagger stuck in Gu's body and gave it a twist. With a scream, Gu suddenly lost all his strength. The gang kicked and hit Gu, about which Gu could do nothing as he was held down. Son of Heaven remained silent and nodded to his men when Gu had become weak. Gu, since you have saved us, hand over your sacred blood sledgehammer and we can let you live, a man said fiercely as he grabbed Gu's hair. Even if I had to die, I will not give you anything. Gu spit out a mouthful of blood at the man's face. Snap! The man slapped Gu hard in anger and said viciously, #King think that you can die whenever you want? If you don't give me the hammer, I will make you beg for a chance to kill yourself. Get rid of his claws first. The gang was skilled at torture. They held Gu's hand down and nailed it on the ground with a dagger. Gu let out an excruciating scream. His fingers could not help spreading out. A man held one of Gu's fingers and stuck a knife under his nail. Covered in blood, the nail had almost been separated from the flesh. With a hard pull, the man took the entire nail abruptly from the finger. Gu was screaming like a pig being slaughtered, his body twitching. The pain was simply beyond imagination. It so happened that he was held down by a few people and could not even move. All he could do was scream desperately. Damn, this gang is heinous. Originally, Han Sen did not want to meddle in this, but he could not stand watching this anymore. The enemy of his enemy was his friend. Although he had no idea who Gu was, Han Sen did not mind adding an enemy of Son of Heaven's. In addition, this kind of torture was too much. Han Sen observed the situation and found that there were too many strong men in Son of Heaven's gang. Han Sen could not save Gu on his own. Why did you have to rescue them? Look at what's happening now, thought Han Sen, waiting for an opportunity. Gu was really tough. After 3 of his nails were pulled off, he still did not agree to their demand and was still cursing the gang. In the end, his body could no longer take the pain and he fainted. Son of Heaven, what now? This guy is tough. Tie him up. Let's find a place to set up the tent and get something to eat first. Son of Heaven saw it was late and did not dare to camp right outside this strange valley. Han Sen quietly tracked the gang and saw they had set up a tent and made a fire. Gu was tied up and Han Sen had not found any good opportunities to rescue him. As Son of Heaven's gang were about to finish eating, Han Sen thought if Gu was tortured again, the big guy would probably be useless even if rescued. Having an idea, Han Sen summoned Meowth and ordered it to run toward the other side and roar at the gang. A creature. It's a sacred blood creature. Do not let it run away. Knife and Baldy, stay. We will go hunt that sacred blood creature, ordered Son of Heaven, leaving 2 guys watching the camp in Gu, while he chased the sacred blood 3-eyed cat with the rest. Running, Son of Heaven instructed, spread out and circle around it. We could not go far since it's dark. Seeing the gang running away, Han Sen summoned the wings and shape-shifted into Bloody Slayer, flying toward the camp in darkness. Baldy, incoming, shouted Knife when Han Sen was 30 feet from the camp. Baldy quickly summoned a mutant beast soul spear and watched Han Sen closely. Knife also summoned his pair of daggers. Han Sen was in their face in no more than the blink of an eye. Holding the Shura katana, Han Sen whacked it at Baldy. This strike from above was swift and powerful, but Baldy raised his spear with 2 hands and tried to block it. The Shura katana cut into the spear deeply, and Baldy's legs were forced into the sand by Han Sen's terrifying strength. When Baldy thought that he had warded off the strike, his spear broke. Baldy wanted to go back, but his legs were still in the sand and there was no way to run. Another katana strike cut Baldy in half. Ding! Ding! 2 daggers were shot at Han Sen and mercilessly nailed in the gaps on the elbow part of his armor. To kill Baldy, Han Sen had no time to dodge. Fortunately, these 2 daggers were only mutant beast souls. Although they were swift enough, they were still stuck before they could cut deeper. Otherwise, Han Sen's arms would have been disabled. After killing Baldy, Han Sen turned to deal with Knife, who immediately started running at an incredible speed, not leaving any chance for Han Sen to approach him. Shouting while running, Knife managed to alert Son of Heaven and the rest of the gang. Han Sen did not chase him, but lifted Gu, who was tied up, and ran away with all 4 hooves of the Bloody Slayer. Dollar, you son of a bitch. If you are a man, fight me one-on-one, cursed Son of Heaven behind him. I think it is more like 1 gang on 1 person, said Han Sen full of disdain, running at full speed. The gang thought that lifting a big man like Gu must slow Han Sen down and they could eventually catch up. But suddenly, a black 3-eyed tiger appeared next to Han Sen, and he simply lay Gu on the tiger's back. The Bloody Slayer and the tiger disappeared from their sight in an instant. Why would that sacred blood creature help Dollar? The gang members were confused. Son of Heaven finally understood. Damn, That is not a sacred blood creature. It is a sacred blood beast soul pet. That motherf asterisk hashtagger had fed a sacred blood pet. Everyone was shocked. A sacred blood pet must have cost so much advanced creature meat to transform. After chasing for a while, the gang gave up. In fact, when they found out that the tiger was a sacred blood pet, they had lost confidence. How did he make a sacred blood pet transform? Did he use sacred blood creature meat to feed his pet? Everyone was shocked by the fact that Dollar had a transformed sacred blood pet, which implied incredible power of him. Han Sen ran for a while and shapeshifted back after losing the gang. He put Gu on the ground and cut loose the ropes. Dollar. Gu recognized him. Friend, how much do you think your life is worth? Asked Han Sen. Gu was suddenly taken aback. You also want my sacred blood sledgehammer? Not necessarily that beast's soul, but I did save you. You do not mean to say the risks I took are for nothing, right? Said Han Sen. Gu did not speak and cast an odd look at Han Sen. And now you have nothing but injuries. Can you leave Devil Desert alone safely? If you pay me properly, I can get you back to the shelter, Han Sen continued. Why should I believe in you? Asked Gu. Do you have any other choice?
Han Sen låg head.
Except for the sacred blood sledgehammer, you can pick from all the other beast souls I have. But you have to take me to the shelter first, said Gu, wiping blood off his face. Brother Gu, is it?
Han Sen looked at Gu.
Call me Gu Ming, or whatever you like. I will not hear Brother Gu ever again. Gu Ming gnashed the teeth in anger.
Han Sen smiled. Okay.
Now you have two options. One is to go out on your own, and the other is to pay up front. There is no other options. I am not son of heaven and will keep my promises. If you pay me 2 mutant beast souls, I could promise to get you back to the shelter alive. Gu Ming looked Han Sen up and down and summoned several beast souls. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I know you and Son of Heaven are enemies, so I believe you. Here are all my mutant beast souls. Take your pick. Han Sen glanced at them and pointed twice. This one is my reward for saving you, and that one is the price to take you back to the shelter. In the station master's office of the teleport station on planet Roka, Qin Xian and Yang Monli were watching a video, the edited game recording made by Feng Mingquan. He is this good at warframes? Yang Monli could not believe Han Sen was the one driving Silver Killer. His operational level was almost the same as the evolved warframe drivers in the army, which was so hard for her to believe. After all, Han Sen had just spent a few months in Blackhawk. Although Yang Monli already knew that Han Sen had fast hands and that he had passed Evolver 3 in Hand of God, she still could not help looking surprised, since this kind of operational skills took more than fast hands. Station Master, so Digong is really asking Han Sen to endorse their new warframe? Yang had mixed feelings. Digong was one of the 3 major suppliers for the military in the Alliance, with their products ranging from combat suits to interstellar warships. Digong made countless products for the military each year, but they also had product lines designed for civil use, which were known for their high quality. Although Digong did not sell as many as Starry Group, Digang's reputation was much better. It was not as well known as Starry Group only because its main client was the military. Recently, Digong had been committed to expanding its civil products. With the military labs as its research and development department, the quality of its products was not in question. However, business did not rely on the technology alone. Currently, Digong was still much worse than its peer Starry Group in terms of sales. This time, Digong had found Han Sen to represent their new flagship product, Biological Warframe, which was beyond the imagination of both Qin Xian and Yang Monli. With Digang's influence, it would be easy for them to seek endorsement of Evolver or Surpasser stars, yet Digong had chosen Han Sen, an unevolved person. Yang Monli was puzzled. Although Han Sen's skills were great among the unevolved, his level was still lower than the Evolver Masters. She wondered what it was that Digong had seen in him. To endorse a Digong product was a great honor, which Yang knew very well. All the stars who had this honor had military backgrounds and outstanding military exploits. This time, Digong had chosen a military school student who had no military background and had never been to a battlefield. This decision was shocking, to say the least. Monli, contact Han Sen as soon as possible. This is an honor for the special squad as well. Qin Xian felt that she had made the right call to recruit him. A few months after he joined the special squad, Han Sen had become the spokesperson of Digong, which was a boost in the relationship between the squad and Digong. Many weapons of the squad were supplied by Digong, after all, and this time, to the joy of the leadership of the squad. In order to invite Han Sen to endorse their new biological warframe, Digong had promised to provide the squad with a lot more equipment. The leadership was thus very pleased with Qin Xian and Han Sen. "Will do."
Yang Manli nodded slickly.
Han Sen escorted Gu Ming safely to the shelter in a great mood. Although he had not hunted any mutant or sacred blood creatures, he did weaken Son of Heaven's gang and left Son of Heaven with a sworn enemy. In addition, he had gained 2 mutant beast souls. As soon as he was back in the shelter, he was summoned by Yang Manli, which gave Han Sen a little headache. Although Yang Manli had great legs and breasts, she was cold as ice. Han Sen would do his best to keep away from her. Between Qin Xian and her, Han Sen thought Qin Xian was a true woman. Digong has invited you to endorse their new warframe. Go prepare yourself. When you are back in the Alliance, Digong will send someone to Blackhawk to sign a contract with you. If you have any concerns, speak to me right now and we will talk to Digong, Yang Manli said and laid a file in front of Han Sr. This is your incentives for the endorsement. Can I turn this endorsement down? Han Sen picked up the file, read it, and then asked, "Why?" Yang Manli was shocked. It was a great honor even for many stars to be able to do this. She herself had dreamed of becoming the spokesperson for Digong someday. But presented with such an opportunity, Han Sen was asking whether he could turn this down, which confused Yang. "I would have to be a part of their campaigns and roadshows. And that sounds like a lot of work," Han Sen said with his head crooked. Yang Manli was sizzling with anger, wishing she could choke Han Sen to death. "You don't want to do the endorsement because it is a lot of work?" Yang Manli clenched her fists until her knuckles turned pale. She was controlling herself not to slap this guy in the face. Digong is blind to have picked this guy, thought Yang Manli. After a while, Yang Manli calmed herself down and handed some more files to Han Sen. "Take a good look and let me know if you need anything." Han Sen was satisfied with the offer. Each year he could receive a handsome endorsement fee, and Digong would provide him with a full set of the endorsed products and free lifelong after-sale service. That was to say Han Sen could receive one of each warframe that he endorsed and would not need to pay a penny for their maintenance. Although Han Sen did not know how much their new biological warframes would cost, he knew that even Digang's low-end products would cost a few million, much more expensive than the products of Starry Group. "I have one condition." Han Sen looked up at Yang Manli and said, "Say it." Yang Manli did not want to spare any words on this lucky yet shameless guy. If soldiers had the chance to endorse any Digong products, they would probably even do it for free. Not to mention Digang's offer had been very generous considering Han Sen's identity. Such an offer was more than enough to hire a big unevolved star such as Tang Junliu. Now Han Sen was getting this great offer as a student, and he even dared to ask for more. "I have a warframe from a Digong lab, and wish that Digong could install a weapon system to it and give it the same free lifelong after-sale service." Han Sen knew that although his was a prototype, the military standard was applied during its making, and the ones that he would endorse would be for civil use and not as great as Silver Killer. The only beef Han Sen had with Silver Killer was the lack of a weapon system. Using independent weapons was not convenient, and he did not want to carry the weapons around, which would defeat the purpose of portability. Also, once Silver Killer was damaged, ordinary repair stations would not be able to fix this super biological warframe. Hence, he really needed Digang's service. "Any other conditions?"
Yang Manli asked mechanically.
"Not at this time," Han Sen said with a smile. Yang Manli got up and said, "I will submit your request, and the leadership will negotiate with Digong. Go back and stay in Blackhawk so that I could notify you with the result." Yang Manli turned to leave, not wanting to spend one more second with this guy. "I am finally rich. 20 million endorsement fee per year and the latest warframes to use. If Digong could agree to my conditions, it would be perfect." After Yang Manli left, Han Sen excitedly shook his fist. Han Sen naturally would never have turned down such a good deal in the first place. Little did he know that Ji Yanran was simmering with anger at this point. After that night, Ji Yanran had quite complex feelings, not sure what she wanted to do. to become Han Sen's girlfriend, or turn him down. But how could she make him give up? He had shown her that he would not easily let go. Ji Yanran thought about all kinds of possibilities for the entire night and was expecting hot pursuits from Han Sen to follow. However, she never even saw him again. The first day she did not see Han Sen, Ji Yanran curled her lips and thought, playing hard to get? I've seen this trick before. I will ignore you and see what kind of excuse you'd come up with to see me tomorrow. But on the next day, Ji Yanran still did not see him. You do have some patience, but this would never work on me. On the third day, Han Sen was still nowhere to be seen. Ji Yanran became a bit impatient. He must have been in an accident. Was he hit by an aircraft? Is his leg broken? Ji Yanran thought. On the fourth day, still no Han Sen. That bastard must feel that he doesn't deserve me, who is gentle and pretty, regal and sexy. That must be why he did not dare to approach me. Certainly, that must be the case. The fifth day, the sixth day, the seventh day. After 10 days, she still had not seen him, and she lost her temper. Han Sen, you bastard. What do you take me for? You want to kiss and run? There is no such thing in my world. Ji Yanran was mad, and at this time, Han Sen had just come back to school and did not even have the chance to find her. Sen, you have come back just in time. Come with me to Professor Yan's class. Han Sen met Zhang Yang in the dorm room, who took his hand and dragged him away. How come you are going to Professor Yan's class? Han Sen was puzzled. Zhang Yang was a hot-blooded guy. He learned everything fast, but when it came to boring theories, he would feel tortured. Professor Yan's new course, Modern Theories of Martial Arts, was one of the courses that would give Zhang Yang a headache. The professor himself also had a dull style and expression and was not Zhang's favorite. But Modern Theories of Martial Arts was a compulsory course, and Zhang Yang had to go for fear of failing. This time, however, he seemed excited to go, which was odd for Han Sen. You have not heard? 2 of the chosen, Ding Jiming and Tang Zhenliu, have been invited to do a teaching demonstration today at Professor Yan's class. Zhang Yang was filled with excitement. Han Sen then suddenly realized why he was so excited. Tang Zhenliu was Zhang's idol. It was a poster of Tang instead of a hot girl that Zhang was hanging next to his bed. Zhang Yang's ideal major was not archery, but martial arts. Because his fitness index was not high enough, he had to take the special enrollment program. Han Sen had also wondered why someone like Zhang would study archery, which needed patience, and learned the reason later. Tang Zhenliu's fierce style was Zhang's favorite. No wonder he was so excited. Han Sen was taken to the classroom by Zhang Yang. For an unpopular class, the classroom was overcrowded on this day. There were no seats, and even the stands on the second floor were full. A lot of girls were chatting excitedly about Yu Mingji and Tang Zhenliu. Han Sen, you have also come to see Yu Mingji and Tang Zhenliu. Come here and have a seat. A student saw Han Sen and offered him a seat very enthusiastically. Han Sen hesitated, since he did not recognize this student. It is natural that you do not know me. I am also in the department of archery. You did our department right in Starry Cup. I would give the seat to none but you. Come here. The student smiled and offered Han Sen his own seat. Thank you. Han Sen could not imagine he would enjoy such treatment. It really is Han Sr. His Warframe game was so exciting. Is he also one of the Stars fans? Many students whispered and cast a few glances his way, but they were too well educated to bother Han Sen. As the class began, Professor Yin came in with 2 young men. One of them Han Sen was familiar with. With a handsome smile, Tang Zhenliu greeted the students. Another guy had an angled face. Han Sen knew he was the chosen that ranked 6th, Yu Jiming. Since Han Sen did not go to the ranking rounds, he had never fought Yu. Blackhawk students were polite and gave no more than applause. When Tang was introduced, Zhang Yang clapped so hard his hands were almost swollen. Professor Yin still used his old-fashioned way to teach, but when talking about different theories, he would ask Tang Zhenliu and Yu Mingji to do demonstrations. With the participation of 2 stars, the teaching effect was perfect. Both stars showed high attainment in martial arts, and their demonstrations were successful. In a few words, the ultimate goal of the martial arts was to leverage one's own strength. And in real combat, in addition to strength, the psychological factor would also be very important. Hence, in the various categories of martial arts, there would be training for psychological gaming. For example, the focus of Tai Chi was the application of the true and false forces. Professor Yin continued with his monotonous voice. Another example is the black and white boxing. Please welcome Yu Jiming and Tang Junliu to demonstrate black and white boxing for us. Yu Jiming cut in, Professor Yin, if it is just the two of us, the students would not feel for themselves the essence of black and white boxing. Would you invite 2 students to spar with Tang and me? The proposal led to applause. To spar with such stars was of course a rare opportunity. Tang, what do you think? Professor Yin looked at Tang, as the school did not arrange any interactions with the students, and he must seek his approval first. This is your class. I will follow your lead, Tang said with a smile. Tang also glanced at Yu Mingji. He knew what Yu was thinking. Yu had fought him in the contest before and lost miserably. Now Yu was afraid he would lose again and did not want to be humiliated in front of the class. That being the case, we will choose 2 students to spar with Yu Mingji and Tang Junliu in black and white boxing. Any volunteers? Professor Yin glanced across the room. Almost all the students raised their hands at the same time, except for Han Sen and a few others. Tang had noticed Han Sen a long time ago. Seeing Han Sen not raising his hand, he felt relieved. Han Sen was so great at this that he would definitely lose if Han Sen came up on stage. As Tang Junrong let out a sigh of relief, Yu Mingji suddenly asked, Professor Yin, I heard that Blackhawk has a student named Ouyang Shaosan who is in the top 10 of the Military Academy League? Sorry, Ouyang is not here today, Professor Yin said casually. Would you choose someone else yourself? Yu Mingji smiled and asked the students, besides Ouyang Shaosan, who was the best martial artist here? All eyes were on Han Senator. Although they had never seen him practicing martial arts, they could tell from his skills of warframe operation that his fitness was great. Yu Mingji paused. He did not expect the students to have the same candidate in mind. It seemed that the student that was looked at was very influential in the school. But you did not take Han Sen too seriously. There were so many military school students in First God's Sanctuary, yet few were among the chosen. As one of the chosen, he did not really think of the students as his true opponents. Tang Junliu saw the look in Yu's eyes and knew he was about to do something stupid, but Yu did not know what was on Tang's mind. He smiled at Han Sen and asked, What is your name? Would you spar with me in black and white boxing? Han Sen was a bit upset. He did not raise his hand. So why would you appoint him? Go ahead, senior. You will be great. His classmates were very supportive and curious about Han Sen's martial arts skill level. Yu Mingji was glad to see that Han Sen's popularity even exceeded himself as a star. He wanted to appoint Ouyang Shaosan to show off, so that these students would realize the difference between a military student and the chosen. However, Ouyang was not there, and beating a nobody would not help him achieve his objective. Friend, your classmates have strongly recommended you, so please come up. It is just a practice, and the result does not matter. Yu Mingji smiled at Han Sen and said, Wow, Yu Mingji is simply asking for trouble.
Tang smiled bitterly.
He had never seen someone praying for his own destruction like this. Han Sen, come up and spar with Yu Mingji in black and white boxing practice. Professor Yin did not want to waste any time and directly called Han Sen. Han Sen had to stand up and go up the stage. Tang Junliu saw it and said, Professor Yin, since you has chosen a student, should I do the same? He did not want to play black and white boxing with Han Sen and ask for trouble. Yu Jiming could enjoy that himself. Professor Yin had no objection and agreed to Tang's proposal. Who is willing to practice black and white boxing with me? Tang Junliu felt relieved and asked with a good-looking smile. There was a great show of hands. Tang smiled and said, I am going to benefit myself and you guys by picking a pretty girl. Miss, would you practice with me? The students laughed, and the girl asked by Tang blushed a little and went on the stage. Tang Junliu learned her name and asked Professor Yin first. Professor Yin, should we start first? Professor Yin agreed. Tang Junliu and Miss Jing started to practice black and white boxing. Tang did not really use all he had, but followed the professor's instructions and demonstrated a variety of movements before he beat Miss Jing. The process was delightful, and the students all applauded. Han Sen, it is our turn. Yu Mingji could not wait to go up. He smiled and waved to Han Sen. Tang returned to his seat with a faint smile, waiting to see Yu Jiming embarrassing himself. Tang did not know you well and was not a fan of his. There was no way Tang would stop you. Han Sen smiled, walked opposite you, and stood with a starting position like you did. The so-called black and white boxing practice was, in fact, a training of the judgment of yin and yang forces. Two players stood opposite each other face to face, one arm's length apart. One was to swing one's arm to attack, and the other was to defend oneself. There were two ways of making the attack. A black fist was a yang blow, and a white fist was a yin blow. The one on defense needed to determine whether the opponent was using a black or white fist. If it was black, it should be dodged, whereas if it was white, it should be blocked with an arm. Black and white boxing was an entry-level martial art to train psychological gaming and yin and yang forces. All military school students would learn it in the first 3 months of training. Therefore, all military school students had practiced black and white boxing. The black and white fists were thrown in similar manners in black and white boxing. It was not easy to tell one from the other. Observation, judgment, and psychological gaming were the key factors, and reflexes were less important. If one's judgment was not accurate, it did not matter if one's reflexes were good. Han Sen, would you throw the punches first? Yu Mingji said generously. The one who attacked would enjoy certain advantages. Yu was confident in his accomplishments in black and white boxing, and believed that he could tell from Han Sen's micro-movements which fist Han Sen was using. Can we start now? Han Sen looked at Yu and asked. Sure. Ouch. Yu Mingji had just agreed when a punch hit his chest before he could react. Yu stepped back and became furious. Professor Yin was explaining seriously. Han Sen did very well. This is a classic psychological gaming technique, taking advantage of the weaknesses in the opponent's mind and hitting hard. However, Han Sen could have improved by hitting the vital parts of his opponent's body, such as nose or eyes, which would disable his opponent and help himself in the future rounds. The students nodded, while Yu Mingji was very pissed. Then he had to suppress his anger, since the professor had put it like this. Han Sen did very well. Now we will continue. Yu Mingji squeezed a smile and went back to his position. Tang was laughing so hard inwardly. Yu Mingji, you really did ask for this. It is just a demonstration. Have fun with a girl. Why did you have to provoke a monster? Even God cannot save you now. Yu Mingji, of course, did not think so. He thought he was just being careless, and it had nothing to do with his skill level. Once he became serious, Han Sen would stand no chance. How could a military school student be compared to the chosen? In fact, most of the students also thought so. Although they felt that Han Sen should be great, they believed that against one of the top unevolved individuals in the alliance, Han Sen would still fall short. After all, you basically ranked 6th in the first God Sanctuary, while Han Sen was only the champion of a school-wide Warframe game, not even a martial arts game. Therefore, the students still felt that you would do better than Han Sen. Han Sen, go ahead. Yu Mingji finished his sentence and immediately became alert, staring at Han Sen. Han Sen directly threw his fist at Yu Mingji's face, since Professor Yin had instructed him to hit hard in the vital parts. Yu Mingji looked at Han Sen's standing position, angle of his body, and the ups and downs of his shoulder. Soon Yu easily made his judgment. Such exaggerated acting. Clearly there is no momentum. He clearly seems to be bluffing, but it is a yin blow for sure. I was better than this in kindergarten. Yu Mingji raised his arm with some contempt, ready to block this white fist from Han's senator. He even used only one arm to show off his self-confidence and accurate judgment.
Bang!
Han Sen punched Yu Mingji on the arm. Yu's face suddenly froze. He thought this punch was thrown with the yin force and used only one arm to block Han Sen's fist. But the fierce punch was actually a black fist, which was a yang force, and Yu's arm was smashed into his own face. Sparkles suddenly flew before Yu's eyes, and a feeling of soreness hit his nose. He fell back involuntarily and sat on the floor. A hush descended on the entire room as the students were dazed. The result of the first round could be explained by the fact that Yu was unprepared, whereas the second punch was hit when Yu was intent and alert. However, Yu Mingji still made the wrong judgment.
Han Sen is awesome.
He is good at black and white boxing as well. Haha, no matter what the outcome would be, this one punch is good enough. It is the chosen he is playing against. So cool. He is the pride of Blackhawk. Haha, did you see how the expression of Yu Mingji has changed? Han Sen is simply my idol. How many military school students can manage to hit you? It is so worth it today to come to Professor Yan's class. Tang Jinliu could hardly contain himself for laughing. Yu Mingji, if you are smart, then quickly find an excuse to step down now before you humiliate yourself any further, thought Tang. Professor Yin was making a serious analysis. This is textbook application of yin and yang forces. Pay attention to his toes, which were slightly pointed outward. This is an appearance of using the yin force, since the toes would normally point inward when using the yang force. Han Sen managed to use this disguise, among others, to confuse his opponent. Now if you would pay attention to his waist and shoulders. Professor Yin played back the holographic image of Han Sen's punch and made a detailed analysis, pointing out the strengths of this blow. Although the professor's tone was monotonous as ever, he did highly praise Han Sen's performance. *T. Well done. So many details in one punch. After listening to the professor, the students shook their heads in tribute. Yu Mingji wiped his bloody nose and got up, unable to keep smiling. But he did not give up like Tang thought he should. Yu Jiming continued to believe that his loss was due to his carelessness and walked up to Han Sen again. Han Sen knew what was on Yu's mind and understood that Yu wanted to use a student to show off his own strength. Hence Han Sen did not plan to save his face. Another punch was thrown at Yu's face. Eyes locked on Han Sen, Yu again made a judgment. From any perspective, Han Sen's punch was not firm though it looked fierce. Yu decided that it was a harmless punch. Having spent nearly a decade in First God's Sanctuary, Yu had experienced millions of combats. With his rich experience, he was confident in his judgment. Even if it was just a practice between friends, as long as the punch was thrown with any intention to beat the opponent, he would sense it. White fist. Yu Mingji confirmed his own judgment and put two arms across his chest to block the punch.
Bang!
Yu Mingji's face turned ashy gray and was only able to stabilize his body after stepping back. He looked at Han Sen, astonished. It was impossible, and the students were so excited that they were about to cry out loud. No one had expected Han Sen to beat Yu once again. If it was not for the fact that the class was still in session, they would go up and hug Han Sen, because it was such an honor for a Blackhawk student to beat the Chosen 3 times in a row. If anyone dared to praise the Chosen in the future, they could say, "The 6th Chosen was beaten up so badly by one of my classmates. Oh, I did not go. If I did, that Chosen would lose even more miserably. You think I am bragging? You can ask around yourself." Professor Yin was still doing his job, explaining the theoretical knowledge embodied in Han Sen's performance to the students in detail, but unfortunately few were paying attention to his words at this point. Tang even felt embarrassed for Yu Mingji, who had suggested to switching with Han Sen. Tang Jinliu shook his head. Yu Mingji has such a small mind. It did not need to be like this. Han Sen agreed to use proposal and became the defensive side. Fixing his gaze on Han Sen, Yu threw a hard punch at the young student. Seeing the fear on the students' faces, Yu smiled within himself. Now all of you must have thought that I have been angry and want to retaliate, so this punch must a black fist? That would be unfortunate since I threw a white punch. This way I would win this round and look like a bigger person at the same time, salvaging my own reputation. Yu Mingji believed that Han Sen would definitely dodge, yet the young student did not even cross his arms. Han Sen simply reached out a hand in front of Yu's fist. Yu Mingji suddenly turned pale. Since his fist was grabbed by Han Senator, the two stood still. *T. Just awesome. I thought it was a black fist for sure, and it was a white one. Han Sen is so great. That is dope. And he is so confident. He is so good at everything. Professor Yin was still meticulously analyzing and teaching. More and more students had come since they heard about Han Sen's performance. Even the corridor outside the windows was full. Those who could not come were also watching the synchronous holographic session via their smart device. Yanran, go to the campus community site. Chu Lily suddenly poked Ji Yanran with a finger and whispered, "Stop it. We are in class." Ji Yanran was not in a good mood since she had not seen Han Sen for days. "Have you heard that Yu Mingji and Tang Jinliu have come to our school to do teaching demonstrations?" continued Chu Lily, excited. Yeah, but I am not interested in the idols, replied Ji Yanran, absent-minded. When Yu Mingji demonstrated black and white boxing, he picked our genius to spar with him and got his ass kicked 3 times in a row. Genius? Which genius? Ouyang Xiaosan? Ji Yanran asked after looking blank for a moment. Nope, I am talking about the genius, Chu Lily said solemnly. Which genius? Ji Yanran did not follow. Who can it be? The one who killed it at the Warframe game. He is the only genius on campus. Chu Lily rolled her eyes at Ji.
Han Sen.
Ji Yanran winced, and then quickly turned on her comlink and entered the live broadcast of Professor Yan's class. The moment she entered the live session, she saw Yu Jiming throwing a punch at Han Sen, who then stopped Yu's fist with one hand. So confident. Our genius is so awesome. But Yu is too weak. If my Tang Jinliu is against him, then it will be even better to watch, Chu Lily said excitedly. She was a fan of Tang's, and that was why she was paying attention to this class in the first place. After a while, she added, why do I think the genius looks familiar? I must have seen him somewhere. You have seen him during the Starry Cup? Ji Yanran blushed and said quickly, I think it is somewhere else. Chu Lily was slightly puzzled, but soon threw the thought aside. Here goes Yu Mingji again. Ji Yanran was secretly relieved. Fortunately, it was dark that night in front of the dorm building. Chu Lily did not see clearly Han Sen's face and was scared away by Han Sen's bluff. Watching Han Sen from her comlink set Ji Yanran's teeth on edge. Well, Han Sen, you are showing off in martial arts class now. Which girl are you trying to hook up with now? Ji Yanran looked at the old professor who was lecturing in her class and sneaked out of the classroom when he was not paying attention. Sweetie, where are you going? Chu Lily looked at her, surprised. Ji Yanran waved her hand and gestured Chu to be silent before she quickly left for Professor Yan's classroom. She was going to find that bastard Han Sen and forbid him to fool another girl. But when she came to Professor Yan's classroom, the corridor was so crowded with people that she could see nothing. Ji Yanran had to continue to watch her comlink and wait for Han Sen to come out. Han Sen has made a perfect demonstration of black and white boxing. Professor Yan had been committed to teaching and made a great analysis of the performance of Han Sen. Yu Mingji did not believe he was simply weaker and tried 3 times with white fist, each easily blocked by Han Sen with a single hand. Yu's face was the color of pig liver in the end, and Professor Yan had to declare an end to the black and white boxing demonstration. Yu Mingji's face was almost blue. He wanted to show his skills off at Blackhawk and had been humiliated big time. As the chosen, it was such a disgrace to be beaten by a military school student, especially in such shameful manner. The worst part for you was that Han Sen was only following Professor Yan's instructions from the beginning to end, and showed no pride after winning. It was as if Yu Jiming was a nobody, and beating him was not worth celebrating. Sen, I did not expect you were so good at black and white boxing too. When we go back, Zhang Yang stopped when thinking of the mysterious afternoon in room 304, and gave up the thought eventually. The rest of the class was somehow awkward. Yu Mingji was restless with his face dark. The students kept glancing at Han Senator, although no one was whispering in class. The online community was bombarded. The genius beat the chosen. 3 punches knocked a chosen out.
Ah, a genius from Blackhawk.
Great at both Warframe and black and white boxing. I want to see a fight between Han Sen and Tang Jinliu. Not sure who would be better. Is that still worth asking? Of course it is Han Sr. Not necessarily. Tang is much better than Yu Mingji. Tang has been the chosen for years and will soon go to Second God's Sanctuary. Makes sense. Tang's only 2 matches in the unevolved would be Dollar and Lin Feng. Tang is great, but we have a genius here. I do think he could fight Tang. I am afraid there is no chance for us to see that. Our genius did not want to go up, and Yu Mingji had to make him. Tang would not do such a thing. It's a pity that we could not see them fight. Reading the comment in the campus community, Ji Yanran couldn't help smiling when seeing others praise Han Sen, as if she was praised herself. After Professor Yan's class, Ji Yanran saw many students hovering over Han Sen and decided not to join them. Ji Yanran checked the time and turned toward the cafeteria. She knew for sure that around this time, Han Sen would go to the cafeteria where there were their favorite juices. Jia Ran did not go far before she was stopped Chu Lily, who had run over. Sweetie, did you go and check on our genius in the middle of our class? Who said I went to see him? Ji Yinran curled her lips and said with shame, Why else would you skip the class?
Que Lilia sked, puzzled.
To eat, Ji Yinran said, and walked toward the cafeteria. Chu Lily followed her to the cafeteria. Ji Yinran deliberately sat in plain sight and thought with venom, If that bastard does not take the initiative to come over, I will not forgive him.